Welcome to the Family Stories channel. I hope you enjoy today's story, which is called Disowned Me Because of My Sexuality, the Triumphant. So, let's get to the story. Family should be synonymous with unconditional acceptance, a safe harbor where we can be who we truly are. But for many, revealing their true identity can mean losing that harbor. This is the story of Ethan, a young man who faced rejection from his own father because of his sexuality, and how he transformed that pain into a triumph that no one could have predicted. Ethan grew up in a traditional family in a rural town. His father, Edward, owned the largest construction company in the region, a man respected by all but feared at home for his authoritarian temper and conservative views. From an early age, Ethan realized he was different, that he didn't fit the mold his father had designed for him. The Miller family was known in town not only for the real estate empire built by Edward, but also for their apparent perfection. Ryan, the eldest son, followed in his father's footsteps in business. Ashley, the youngest, was the family's princess. Ethan, the middle child, was always the most sensitive and creative, characteristics that his father considered weaknesses. At 18, Ethan went to study architecture in the state capital, partly to escape the suffocating environment at home. It was there that he could finally be himself, meet people who accepted him, and eventually fall in love with Chris. After 2 years of dating, he decided it was time to be honest with his family. Ethan's decision to reveal his sexuality to his family during a Christmas dinner would forever change the course of his life. Ethan planned everything carefully. He waited until the end of dinner when everyone was relaxed. Chris was waiting at a nearby hotel, ready to support him afterward. Ethan took a deep breath and simply said, "Dad, Mom, Ryan, Ashley, I need to tell you something important. I'm gay and I've been in a serious relationship for 2 years." The silence that followed was deafening. Mary, his mother, dropped the fork she was holding. Ashley, his younger sister, seemed surprised but not shocked. Ryan avoided looking at his brother. Edward, his father, was the last to react. "Repeat what you said," Edward said in an icy voice. "I'm gay, Dad. I always have been, and I'm in love with someone wonderful," Ethan replied. "Not in my house, not in my family. You have 2 options. Either you forget this ridiculous phase and get back on the right track, or you are no longer my son," Edward declared, abruptly standing up. "It's not a phase, Dad. It's who I am," Ethan stated. "Then it's decided. Get out of my house now and don't come back. As of today, I no longer have a son named Ethan," Edward sentenced. Mary tried to intervene but was silenced by a stern look from her husband. Ashley cried silently. Ryan remained impassive, as if the scene didn't affect him. Ethan left that house feeling like he had been punched in the stomach. Chris was waiting for him at the hotel, and seeing his state, immediately understood what had happened. Ethan spent the entire night crying in his boyfriend's arms. In the following days, Ethan tried to contact his mother and siblings, but the messages went unanswered. A week later, he received a formal letter from his father's law firm. "Please be advised that Mr. Edward Miller has amended his will, removing Ethan Miller as a beneficiary of any assets or shares in the family businesses. Additionally, financial support for his studies will be discontinued immediately," the letter Ethan read with disbelief stated. Overnight, Ethan found himself without a family, without financial support, and just months away from graduating in architecture. It was the most difficult period of Ethan's life. He had to leave the apartment his father paid for, get a job to cover his expenses, and still finish college. Chris was his rock during this time, offering not only emotional support but also a place to stay. Despite the difficulties, Ethan graduated with honors in architecture. His creativity and talent soon caught the attention of the market. He started working at a small firm, but his innovative and sustainable vision for urban projects quickly set him apart. 3 years after being disowned, Ethan received an unexpected call. It was Mr. Thompson, a former partner of his father who had retired years earlier. He had seen Ethan's work in an architecture magazine and wanted to meet him. "Ethan, I've been following your career from afar. Your talent is extraordinary. I always knew you had something special, even when you were just a boy drawing houses on the corners of meeting papers," Mr. Thompson praised. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. That means a lot to hear," Ethan replied emotionally. "Your father made a terrible mistake in rejecting you, not only as a father but also as a businessman. Your vision for sustainable architecture is exactly what the market is looking for now, Mr. Thompson stated. Mr. Thompson made a surprising proposal. He wanted to invest in a new architectural firm with Ethan as the main partner. The initial investment would be substantial, allowing Ethan to assemble a top-notch team and compete for larger projects. Mr. Thompson's proposal changed Ethan's life. Within 2 years, the firm New Horizons became a reference in sustainable projects. They won international awards, and their client portfolio kept growing. Ethan and Chris got married, bought a beautiful house, and Ethan finally felt he had found his place in the world. Meanwhile, the Miller family's construction company faced difficulties. The market increasingly demanded sustainable and innovative projects, areas in which the company, still clinging to traditional methods under the leadership of Edward and Ryan, was falling behind. 5 years after being kicked out of home, Ethan received another unexpected call. It was Ashley, his younger sister, with whom he had secretly reconnected a few months prior. "Ethan, I need to tell you something. Dad's in serious trouble. The construction company is on the verge of bankruptcy. They lost the contract for the new business center to a more innovative and sustainable proposal," Ashley revealed. "Let me guess, the winning proposal was from EcoBuild?" Ethan asked, surprised. "Yes, how do you know?" Ashley questioned. "Because EcoBuild is one of our main clients. We developed the architectural project for them," Ethan explained with a sigh. The irony of the situation didn't escape Ethan. Without knowing it, he had contributed to the downfall of his father's empire. But instead of feeling satisfaction, he felt a strange mix of sadness and concern. Ethan asked Ashley how everyone was doing. She said that their mother had finally found the courage to stand up to their father, threatening to leave him if he didn't change his behavior. Ryan was drinking too much, blaming their father for the company's situation. And their father, well, he was unrecognizable, a shadow of the powerful man he once was. A few days later, Ethan received a proposal that shocked him. The Miller Construction Company was for sale, and one of the potential buyers wanted New Horizons to assess the value of the company and its properties. When Ethan saw his father's company name on the documents, his first instinct was to refuse. Why would he help the man who had rejected him so cruelly? But then he thought about the employees, the families who depended on that company, and decided to take the job. During the evaluation process, Ethan discovered that the situation was even worse than he imagined. The construction company was drowning in debt, with unfinished projects and canceled contracts, but he also saw potential well-located land, a competent technical team that just needed new direction, a brand still respected despite recent problems. It was then that Ethan had a bold idea. He talked to Chris, Mr. Thompson, and finally his lawyer, Dr. Oliver. He wanted to buy his father's company. "Are you sure about this, Ethan? It would be a risky investment, considering the company's situation." "Not to mention the emotional aspect," Dr. Oliver questioned. "I'm sure. It's not about revenge, it's about redemption. Not just of the company, but maybe of my family too," Ethan replied with conviction. Ethan, with the support of Mr. Thompson and other investors who trusted his vision, made an offer for the Miller Construction Company. It was a fair offer considering the debts, but it included a non-negotiable condition. The final meeting to sign the contract had to be attended by Edward Miller. On the day of the meeting, Ethan arrived early at the construction company's office, a place where he had spent so many summers during his adolescence, watching his father work, dreaming of one day being part of it all. Chris was by his side, holding his hand under the table. When Edward entered the meeting room, accompanied by Ryan and their lawyers, the shock on his face upon seeing Ethan was evident. For a moment, it looked like he was going to turn around and leave, but Ryan grabbed his arm, whispering something in his ear. Ethan's father looked like he had aged 20 years. His eyes, once full of authority and confidence, were now dull, defeated. Ryan wasn't much better, with deep circles under his eyes and trembling hands. "What does this mean? Are you the buyer?" Edward asked in a weak voice. "Yes, Dad. My partners and I are interested in acquiring the Miller Construction Company," Ethan confirmed. "To destroy it, to get revenge?" Edward questioned with a hint of pride. "No, Dad, to save it, to transform it into something that can thrive in this new world. A world you refuse to accept. Just as you refuse to accept me," Ethan replied. The tension in the room was palpable. The lawyers exchanged uncomfortable glances. Ryan kept his eyes fixed on the table. Our offer is fair. It keeps the jobs, assumes the debts, and still leaves a reasonable amount for you and Ryan. But I have an additional condition, Ethan continued. What condition? Edward asked suspiciously. I want you to be present at the press conference announcing the sale. I want you to publicly introduce me as your son and the new CEO of the company, Ethan proposed. Edward remained silent for a long moment. Ryan finally raised his eyes, watching his father with a mixture of anxiety and expectation. Why? Why would you do this after everything I've done? Edward asked, his voice trembling. Because I learned something you never understood, Dad. Family isn't just about blood or tradition. It's about love, acceptance, and sometimes forgiveness. I'm offering you the chance to save not only your company but also our family, Ethan explained. At that moment, the door to the room opened, and Mary and Ashley entered. Ryan had informed them about the meeting. Edward, please, we already lost our son once. Don't make the same mistake again, Mary pleaded, tears in her eyes. I accept your conditions, Ethan, Edward said after a long silence, his voice breaking. The press conference took place a week later. It was a surreal moment for everyone involved. Edward, visibly nervous, introduced Ethan as his son and the new CEO of the now renamed Miller and New Horizons. When his father said those words, my son Ethan, Ethan felt something he hadn't expected, not satisfaction or revenge, but a profound relief. As if a weight he had carried for years was finally lifted from his shoulders. In the following months, the transition in the company was challenging but successful. Ethan brought his innovative and sustainable vision, revitalizing abandoned projects and winning new contracts. To the surprise of many, he invited Ryan to stay with the company, recognizing his knowledge of the local market. The reconciliation with the family didn't happen overnight. With his mother and Ashley, it was easier. They had always wanted to stay in touch but were prevented by their father. With Ryan, it was a slower process, full of difficult conversations and tense moments. But over time, he not only accepted his brother's sexuality but became an ally. The relationship with Edward, however, remained the most complex. Ethan's father will never be the type of person who marches in a pride parade. He still struggles with his prejudices and traditional views. But he's trying, in his own way. At the first Christmas together after the reconciliation, he invited Chris to the family dinner. It was a small gesture to many but a huge one coming from him. The company thrived under Ethan's leadership. His approach, which combined innovation with respect for local traditions, won over clients and awards. More importantly, it became an example of how family businesses can reinvent themselves. 3 years after taking over the company, Ethan and Chris decided to adopt a child. When they told the family, Ethan's mother cried with joy, Ashley immediately offered to be a godmother, and Ryan joked about being the overly doting uncle. Ethan's father was silent for a moment, then asked, with genuine interest, about the adoption process. On the day Ethan and Chris brought their little daughter Sophia home, the whole family was there to welcome them. Edward, now an older and wiser man, was the first to hold his granddaughter in his arms. Seeing his father holding his daughter, whispering promises of unconditional love in her ear, was the moment Ethan realized that the journey had been worth it. Not because he had won or proven anything, but because everyone had grown and learned. Ethan's story teaches us that true triumph lies not in defeating those who have hurt us, but in staying true to ourselves and being open to the possibility of healing and reconciliation. That sometimes, the path to changing minds and hearts begins with the courage to be who we truly are. Today, when Ethan looks back at that scared young man who was kicked out of home on a Christmas night, he wants to tell him, it's going to be okay. More than okay. You will build not just buildings but bridges. Bridges between the past and the future, between tradition and innovation, between hurt and forgiveness. And those will be your most important constructions. This was the story of how a young man transformed rejection into acceptance and built bridges where there were once only walls. If you enjoyed this narrative, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Until the next story.